and welcome to Infrastructure Matters, the podcast dedicated to exploring the dynamic world of infrastructure, asset management and public works. I'm your host, David Jenkins, CE of IPWEA. In today's episode, we're joined by the Honorary Dean McPherson, South Africa's Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure. Minister McPherson shares his bold vision for transforming South Africa into a nation where infrastructure drives growth, jobs and progress. We'll discuss how his department is fighting corruption, reforming public works programs, embracing digital procurement and building capacity across local government and communities. From climate resilience to tackling vandalism and fraud, this episode dives into the challenges and the opportunities of leading national reform in the infrastructure sector. So grab a coffee and join us for an inspiring conversation on building the future of infrastructure. So welcome to Infrastructure Matters, and I'm delighted to have the Honourable Dean McPherson with me, the Minister for Public Works and Infrastructure from South Africa, and he's been with us at our conference the last 3 days, and it's been a pleasure to have him. Minister, I'm going to get straight into it. What do you think you can take away from just some of the topics and the sessions that you've heard of over the last couple of days?
Well, first of all, it's great to be with you, David, after calling you Derek for 2 days. Thanks for having me. I've really taken away the extraordinary view that the issues are actually the same. It's the scale that's different. And, you know, often you can get quite despondent in this job and dealing with, you know, asset management and infrastructure. And you think, you know, you're the only country in the world that's dealing with these issues. But It's been fascinating to hear, you know, similarities and being able to learn from other colleagues. I was really fascinated by Chris Bishop's discussion. He's a great guy and doing a lot of good stuff in New Zealand. And you know, just being able to learn from that. So it's been really beneficial to be here.
And is this a sort of deliberate policy, not policy, but a deliberate movement to go, okay, let's look at what the outside world is doing. Let's take some of the best of it. Let's bring it back to South. That's not to say that South Africa might also bring other perspectives to the world. Is that sort of been a sort of a thinking?
Absolutely. You know, we've, you know, faced some of these issues for, you know, the last 30 years and, you know, some of it's been solved, some of it hasn't been. And, you know, you can only really, you know, address problems when you look at, you know, best practice around the world. And so, you know, we were keen to come to Australia, you know, just from a point of view that you guys have been, you know, pretty good in that space on asset management and particularly infrastructure, seeing what's happening here in New South Wales. We were in Melbourne a couple of days ago, seeing what they're doing. And, you know, you can only learn and be inspired that actually those issues can be dealt with, that there are, you know, bigger pictures to see.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's just through continual learning that you actually refine your own processes to deliver better products and services for the people of my country.
Yeah. You talked in your presentation, you said, look, you know, we talk about South Africa's a construction site. We've got to see cranes, things happening, progress. How do you balance that, the need for new, but also looking after what you currently have?
I mean, I think that's one of the big themes that have come out of the last couple of days is, you know, you can build, but if you don't maintain, you're in trouble. Mm-hmm. And we've seen historically underinvestment in maintenance. So, you know, we're trying to deal with the economic question and the jobs question on both maintenance and new construction. So we have a program called the Expanded Public Works Program, which is a government employment program, which is really, you know, focused on short-term kind of work. We are re-gearing that to be a working on infrastructure program, which specifically deals with maintenance. So we're going to train and equip people on how to deal with maintenance in infrastructure, which is really important. But at the same time, also being able to build new, and particularly on big catalytic projects in energy, water, transportation. That's our big focus. And I think, you know, sort of the data that we're seeing in the short space that we've been in office is year on year, we've seen 55,000 new jobs created in construction, 20,000 of those just in the second quarter of 2025. So, you know, I expect that after, you know, the policy interventions that we had made, you then start seeing, you know, a build up in that, new projects coming online, confidence in government's ability to deliver, that what we promise we actually do. So, you know, slowly you start putting all of those pieces together. but maintenance is a critical issue for us, particularly in roads, particularly in like stormwater, water retention. We have pretty high levels of non-revenue water loss in our metros. So that's also a big focus of ours.
I read about your key priorities, and you obviously specify the expanded public works program, and we talk a lot about the missing piece to all this is people, capacity, capability. You can have all the processes, the systems, the frameworks, but you actually need the people. How does that translate from a policy perspective actually into the reality on the ground? And I'll give you an example. I always look to Canada, who ring-fenced money for training and development, specifically in asset management planning. And they said, right, we're going to work with industry partners and we're going to deliver specific training. Is that the way you see? Is that the way you see it? Is that how it's going to sort of work in South Africa?
Well, for me, people have to be at the center of what we do, and we own 88,000 buildings, and all of that maintenance is outsourced to facility management companies. Why not use people? We own the asset. Let's train them, let's equip them, and let's put them into those buildings and other infrastructure assets to maintain ourselves. We can lower the cost of that maintenance and lower the cost of those inputs, which ultimately is at the benefit for the state. Because, we have a strange situation where I'm the largest owner of property assets in the country, yet most government departments and entities are housed in private buildings that we lease. So we're on a big drive to bring government departments and entities back into our own buildings, invest into them, with the money that would have been paid on those leases. Also partnering with the private sector to redevelop some of those buildings.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, lift up the value proposition of that portfolio. But at the center of all of that is going to be people. It's going to be opportunities for people. It's going to be training, maintenance, and development of skills, so that, when they're able to move off of those projects, they're able to find possibly longer-term employment in the private sector as well.
And does that mean, in reality, does that mean partnering with educational institutions, professional bodies, peak bodies, industry partners? Is that the sort of way it's going to...
Absolutely, specifically with our universities and training colleges.
Yeah.
That's really important. We have a problem in South Africa in that, education, just historically where we come from, education was denied to the vast majority of the country. So, you have a large group of people that, possibly will never qualify for tertiary education. So, you've got to then be able to give them skills on site, which is recognized training, which they can then use afterwards. So, we have these training colleges that we're partnering with specifically, and we have a really great organization in South Africa called Harambee Youth Accelerator. And what they do is they work with government to build the systems that then drive youth development and recognition. So they are partnering with us in this reformed program to take people just sort of from poverty alleviation, to economic opportunity. And maintenance and infrastructure is going to be at the center of that new focus for us.
That's great to hear. Just want to outline for the listenership just your 5 priorities that you've said publicly: fighting corruption and strengthening governance, accelerating infrastructure delivery, restructuring our asset management systems. You've already mentioned it, reforming the expanded public works program and driving digitization across the department. Of all those, some of them are long-term, some of them a bit more short-term. Out of those priorities, how would you rate yourself in terms of progress? And what do you think? What are some of the challenges that you're facing with those priorities?
Yeah, so for us, the governance issue is an ongoing one.
Yeah, long term.
When there's possibly been a lack of governance or internal controls, it takes a long time to rebuild something like that. So that's an ongoing process, and we've had some really tough conversations with our entities and delivery units. We have something called the Independent Development Trust that delivers social infrastructure, schools, clinics, police stations. And, I've effectively installed a new board. They suspended the CEO. So, but while that sounds horrific, and it really is, it's part of a renewal culture in our department that we only want excellence and ethical people that will drive our agenda. The digitalization is in some aspects short term and some aspects long term. So at least how we deal with internal memorandums, that has all now gone electronic. How we have our systems of approval, supply chain management, etc., that will be more long term. We're actually going to move to a process, what we call e-procurement.
Yeah.
So we're going to take completely the human hand away from procurement and tender awards, and it'll all be done basically through our AI that assesses each bid on its merits, price, ability to deliver. It'll flag any bad records of companies. So that's going to be a game changer for us. So it's about having a 5-year plan and then relentlessly executing on each of those. So I think we're probably about 25% of the way there total, and that's not bad for 1 year. We do have a 5-year term, so we may be slightly ahead of the curve of where we need to be. Some stuff is slow, some stuff we're moving quickly on. But it's just, it's a relentless pursuit of excellence for us that we become a trusted department in government to deliver for the people of South Africa.
Just taking that e-procurement, was that an idea that was sort of born out of your department and your officers, officials, or was it just something you took from the international space?
Well, it's actually something that we've taken from another department and provincial government that my political party is involved in KwaZulu-Natal. It's my home. The Treasury Minister there has implemented that. So it's currently being trialed. So once that trial is taken place, we'll then literally just adapt the software into ours, and we're encouraging then other state governments and those ministers responsible for public works to implement the same, so that when we then have a common platform of how procurement is done across the country.
So, I mean, your federal or central government, how do you plan to work with local government in some of these reforms? And you might have heard today, like in Australia, local government owns 80% of the asset base. They're dealing with issues right on the ground. They're at the coalface, workforce capacity and capability, climatic events, aging infrastructure. How are you sort of translating some of these things that you're trying to do from a top level and bringing it right back down to sort of the local government level?
Well, as the former Speaker of Congress, Tip O'Neill, once said, that all politics is local. And that's true for government as well. And so, that's where people interact with government the most, is through their local councils.
Yep.
So, we see local government as an important partner for us. To firstly deal with our assets, because what has tended to happen is that our assets become a burden to cities. If they're not maintained properly, they devalue properties within the vicinity. They can either attract crime or as that picture that I showed you, they can become completely derelict. Now, we don't want to be a bad custodian of properties in cities. So we're working with them to say, you may want to take this property over, or, when we do a co-development, we'd like to bring you in because there'd be benefit for the surrounding area. On the infrastructure side, infrastructure in local municipalities, particularly in water reticulation and energy transmission, is a competency for local government. And local governments quite unwilling to release that. So we have to do it through partnerships. And that's why we are piloting something called Adopt a Municipality through our entity, Infrastructure South Africa, where we are saying, let us help you with the expertise, the planning, the packaging of these projects, making them investment ready so that you can see more benefit in your local councils, and it's to your benefit to do so. So we're doing a pilot project across 4 local councils that are, representative of different political interests, demographics, urban, rural, etc. And we'll have those results in 24 months' time. We'll hopefully then be able to show the local government association and all the mayors that actually working together with us is to your benefit, because we can deliver more investment, more projects and that actually is electorally, helpful for you. So that's quite exciting, but it's got to be on a partnership basis.
That sounds very promising, and I think others will be very interested in that. So you're trying the pilot. You said 4 different places. Is it depending on the results and how it all goes? Is that going to be sort of an opt-in and encouragement thing? Are you going to sort of develop policies and frameworks that sort of they have to do this? How are you going to manage it? Sort of given waiting for the success or otherwise?
Yeah. So constitutionally, how South Africa is set up is we have 3 distinct spheres of government, and there's quite a big degree of autonomy in local government. So we can't impose ourselves. So we're going to seek to do it by incentive. So and the results of those projects will show that there's an incentive to work with us because we can deliver what you can't. And it's not to say it's because of that party or that party. It's just to say that local councils don't have some of the technical expertise that are required to deliver major multi-billion rand projects. It is the way it is. So you can either continue to go down that road and not deliver and exacerbate the situation, or you can partner with us and we will do all of that work. We actually set up a fund called the Project Preparation Fund, which we put 180 million rand into, which we said we will actually pay for all of that work for you. We'll do it free of charge. Give us the project, tell us what it is. If it makes financial sense, and we think that there's investment case, we will do all of that work and give it back to you. And just on that 180 million rand, we raised 1 trillion rand worth of infrastructure interest. So that tells me, David, that the issue it's not a financial issue. It's a technical issue that people cannot bring those projects to fruition because they don't have the ability. Because if they did, all of those projects would be out in the market at the moment, but they're not.
Yeah. You'd have heard today, we had the CEO for Infrastructure Australia and the CEO of the Infrastructure Commission in New Zealand. Is there something similar in South Africa? Do you have a similar key priorities pipeline that you're, and also is there a similar body that provides advice to you and your officials on certain issues around workforce capability, decarbonisation, etc.?
So we have an entity called Infrastructure South Africa that are directly accountable to myself. They go a little bit more than providing advice. They do a lot of technical work.
Yeah, okay.
Which is what I was talking about a minute ago in terms of that fund. So they actually plan and prepare projects. And then what we do is we place it into something which we call a construction book. And we launch a new construction book every year of government's priority projects for the year. So we have 260 now investment-ready projects that we launched in May to the tune of about 268 billion rand. And we, Infrastructure South Africa, are focusing on 7 of those as priority projects. And those are from energy, water, transport, and logistics. And they do a lot of the technical work and then also a lot of the regulatory and planning approval work. So as an example, on one of the energy projects that they were working on, some of the approvals, it had gone 6 months and they hadn't received approvals. They stepped in, they got them within 30 days because they were able to work within government to do so. We want to expand their mandate more to become a delivery vehicle as well of infrastructure. So not just planning and approvals, but actually going to the market and delivering those projects and then handing them on to the respective state or local council as well. But that's long-term thinking, and that requires obviously a lot of capacitation, a lot of agreements in government. But in my view, there's got to be some form of central delivery model of infrastructure, because a water authority, national water authority, their focus is not engineering and not construction. It's delivery of water.
Yeah.
And that's not to speak ill of them. It's just the realities of what we face. So we've got to have some form of intervention if we want to not only meet our needs, but also build for the future. So that's one of the ideas that we're looking at as well. And
I understand, I'm not an expert, that's actually a similar model that the UK has gone to.
Yeah,
it's
right.
Both, on the delivery side as well. Yeah, it's interesting. How do you, you've got a big reform agenda that you're trying to push through. You're part of a coalition government. how do you manage it all? You get up every day. You've got all these things, happening. How do you prioritize? How do you, just what's the reality of your day-to-day life, Minister? I'm always fascinated to understand with your sort of portfolio.
So I think you've got to prioritize those things that you can win.
Yeah.
And often I say to my team, don't sweat the small stuff. I'm not, interested in small ball politics or arguments. We've got to focus on things that are going to, attacked by a fly or something.
Happens in Australia.
That's true. At least it's not a spider, which I heard was pretty bad.
You don't want to touch them. Everything kills you.
So I'll often say, guys, don't worry about it. Let's just focus on the stuff that's going to move the needle. If it's not moving the needle on growth and jobs, I'm not interested in it, because you can only spend so much of your time fighting. You also have to deliver at the same time. So we try and matrix, what are the key priorities for us, and then focus relentlessly. So we've also created something called a delivery chain. We take our priorities, we take our important issues, and then we actually work forwards on key dates that have to be met. Who are the officials that have to meet them? And then we review every month about progress on that. And it's either, red, amber, or green. And, if it's red or amber, then we go back to the official and we say, where's the progress on this? So you have to be really focused, because you've got 100 people that want to take you in 100 directions, but you can only go in one direction at any given time. And so you have to be quite ruthless on it. It's going to upset a lot of people as well, because everyone wants their idea placed on your table. Everyone wants their idea to be spoken about. But, you've only got so much time. And the thing about capital in government, political capital, is from the day you are elected and the day you're in government, that capital decreases every single day.
Yeah.
So you have to choose what you're going to spend it on. Yeah. And when you spend it, you want to make sure that you're going to get something back.
How do you how do you balance it though? There's this prioritize, we're very focused on the end goal, or the end goals are, but how do you balance that with communicating that with the electorate, making sure that they're on board, they understand? And also, and I would imagine it's so difficult in the world of politics, no matter where you are now, social media, fast news, this, that. How do you and your team think about managing messages, communicating, taking people on the journey, etc.?
So the one thing that we are very good at is our communication strategy. And our communication strategy, it's simple. It's to be transparent and it's to be visual. What people see, they can understand. What they can't see, they don't know what you're talking about. So we do a lot of pictures, a lot of videos. We do a lot of, we're running a radio ad campaign. We do, digital graphics, because people want to see exactly what it is, that you're doing. And I get that there's an inherent, all politicians are useless, all politicians are lazy. But, you've got to be able to show visually what you are achieving. And that's important. Also being able to use the media, the traditional media, to communicate your message is incredibly important as well for us. So, we take communications very, very importantly. In fact, we've actually radically overhauled the way that the communications department runs in the department and in my office, that we are proactive. Always say to my team, don't wait for the problem to manifest. If you know there's a problem coming, let's get ahead of it and say, we have a problem here. This is what we're going to do about it. And as soon as we have a response, we'll come back to you again and tell you what that response is. Yeah,
proactive. In terms of managing infrastructure, and I know this is not and you said this up on the stage, it's not an isolated problem in South Africa, but you do have issues around fraud, construction mafia, that you talked about, vandalism of assets, which countries all around the world face. But there is a problem, and it's another consideration. How are you tackling some of those issues? Because that's hard stuff.
It is. It's very tough, and let me tell you, it's had a big consequence for my safety in South Africa. And I have a security team that goes with me wherever I am. But you if you're going to allow people with nefarious agendas to take over, whether it's the construction of infrastructure or maintenance of infrastructure, or even internally in your own department, you are not hiding to nothing. So you either have to face it head on, or you should get out. I mean, those are the two options that you have. So we faced it head on. I mean, and there's been those consequences for it, but we are winning that war. And that's, important not only for us, but for the public. I said, we've seen 260 people arrested for people who try and shut down our sites. We've taken consequence action in an entity that was, involved in, trying to bribe journalists and, all sorts of other things that they were going on. So the board was dispensed of. The CEO's been suspended. We've just seen the back end of one of our head of real estate who, was cooking the books effectively on our leases. So you've got to keep fighting and you've got to keep pushing back, which the public love. The public like to see, someone who's fighting for them, but you've got to balance that with, with delivery. Because if you give up and you lose that war, then the country, and any country has a bigger problem than they can manage.
Yeah, just changing the topic slightly. You'd have heard some of the conversations around sustainability, looking at, and it's not just nature-based solutions. It's a combination of circular economy, looking at different ways of doing it. It's not just concrete and steel. How can we integrate the natural environment with the urban built environment, with what society needs and wants? The systems type approach to things. Is there been consideration around what, I mean, you are tackling a lot of things, but there's been some consideration to that, and particularly when we think about changing climatic events and things.
So the one thing that I think Australia, we can all learn a lot from is their approach to sort of integrated infrastructure development, the built environment, ensuring that you have climate resilient infrastructure. I mean, that you guys should really take further into the world, because I think that you're, world leaders, and I think that you've been doing that for the last 20 years, quite frankly. So I'm very impressed with that. And I think that we have a lot to learn on that. I think the point that I made on stage is important, is that there's got to be an incentivization to build for that outcome. And, when I was thinking there, I think that there's actually got to be a greater focus by us in the built environment and infrastructure space, that just as, people are looking at, how to reduce fossil fuels, and that's the right thing on climate change, what are we doing about it in the built environment? What is the global agreement in the built environment on, sustainable infrastructure and climate resilient infrastructure? There's none that I know of. There's no global pact or no global agreement or no African agreement for that matter on it. So it's something that we're going to have to take forward, because, the construction industry, or, construction in itself, is one of the greatest emitters of emissions.
Yep.
And so, unless there's some form of agreement on that, and not just focusing on agriculture and on fossil fuels, we're missing a big piece of that puzzle. But, in Africa, let's use that as an example, infrastructure is severely underdeveloped across the continent.
Yeah.
They are going to be looking at the cheapest option to build that infrastructure. Now, if climate resilience infrastructure is much more expensive, who then funds that gap? And those are the funding questions that we then have to look at, because the funding question is being answered on the just energy transition, but it's not being answered on the infrastructure question. So there's a disparity that I think that collectively we're going to have to find a solution to that.
Just listening to you and talking to you over the last few days, you describe yourself as, I'm not an engineer, but it's very obvious to me that you are incredibly learned around the whole topic. How do you get yourself around, as a minister day to day, you're dealing with projects, reports, lobbyists, all coming at you. How do you filter through all the information, and how do you get yourself up to speed on some of the things that are happening in the agendas? Really, we only have so much time.
Yeah, so I'm not an engineer. In fact, I don't even have a tertiary qualification. That's but that's irrelevant to being able to do the job, because let me surround myself with some of the best and brightest minds in the space, which I have. Two, I've adopted a pragmatic approach to dealing with these issues. Some of these issues are not science. they're just logical. And, they're realistic and what is in the national interest to do so. And so, when I run my business, at the end of the day, it's, I listen to people's opinion, but I take the decision at the end of the day. It's the same what I do in government. I listen to people's opinion, but I will then take that decision and we'll go with it. And if you don't execute on it, then there will be problems. And so, I've rightly or wrongly introduced some business ethics into our department that I expect things to be done on time and on budget. No company allows for, overruns. Well, the construction companies do because they benefit on it. But we're going to put a stop to that because I want value for money.
Yeah.
We've got all of these assets that we own. We generate no income. Why not? If you are a property asset owner in any country, you have to report to your shareholders on what revenue you generate. That's what I expect as well. If I'm the shareholder, you need to report to me about what you are doing to generate revenue. So, you start to apply some practical aspects of business, of life, some common sense, and you can actually start to get somewhere, and that's what we're doing.
And what got you into politics? Successful businessman, and you said, "I'm gonna get into politics."
Well, I was tired of governments telling me how to run my business that had never run a business before, and I was the shadow minister for trade and industry. A big part of our business was actually was manufacturing and importing of raw materials from the subcontinent to manufacture. And I was just tired of hearing delays and excuses about port delays. So I decided in a moment of frustration to say I'll go into politics and I'll show them how to do it. And now I'm in the engineering department. So I really got what I asked for.
Yeah. And if we were to sit down, I have no doubt you'll be very successful in the next election. Not that I'm a huge, expert in South African politics, but just talking to you over the last few days. But if we were to sit down in 5 years' time, what legacy would you like to say? You know what? I've achieved this, this, and this, and I'm very proud of that. And that's the legacy I want to leave South Africa.
My legacy, I would like to say, is that firstly, the department must be in better shape than when I first found it.
Yeah.
So that's my number one. My number two is to see South Africa as a major construction site. That wherever you go, there are cranes, there are people digging, because that represents progress. There's no greater progress representation than cranes in the sky. When you go to Dubai, it's just a big construction site, and you know that they're progressing. So that's what I want to see. The third thing that I'd like to see is, a department that is a leader of economic growth and job creation in our country, and we have every opportunity to do that. We own all of these assets that can, really drive the property sector, can drive the construction sector, can change the face of many communities in the country. And so if I get all three of those things right to a degree, because I'm not going to, achieve everything all in those, 5 years is a short.
Oh, no.
I don't know how you guys deal with 3 years on a federal level. I mean, that's crazy. You're asking for problems with that. Someone should change that. So, I would like to, if I can be seen as the person who did those three things in 3.5 years' time, I'll be pretty pleased with myself.
Now, you got an audience. This podcast goes out to about 30,000 of our community across Australia, New Zealand, and globally. Is there sort of one final comment you would like to leave that we probably haven't discussed?
I think that, really people in this space need to, start thinking beyond, what the current topics are. Mm-hmm. And we need to start having the discussion for 20, 30, 40 years' time. I think, as much as infrastructure is about, sort of the 5 and 10 years, I still think that that's too short. I think we've got to go way beyond that. And the point that I made now around, climate resilience, how does that conversation start shaping? Unless we do that, unless, people in this region start doing that, it's going to continue to be dominated by sort of the environmental agenda. And that's not to say it's not important, But I think our agenda is equally important as well. And so I would really encourage, the listeners in Australia and New Zealand. And I'm glad that South Africa is now forcing its way into your international conference.
It is.
I hope that they'll be able to pick that up and take it forward as well.
Minister, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you ever so much, not just for the podcast today, but even just for the last 2-3 days that you spent with us. You've been super proactive. You've been to every session on time, and and I hope
you'll invite me back for the next one.
Well, we would be delighted to. Yes,
it's been so great being here. You guys have really inspired us, and thank you for your warm hospitality.
Thank you. That wraps up another episode of Infrastructure Matters. A big thank you to Minister Dean McPherson for joining us and sharing his vision for South Africa's infrastructure future. His insights into reform, governance, and the role of people and skills in driving change are valuable lessons for us all. To our listeners, as always, thank you for tuning in. We hope today's discussion has sparked ideas that you can apply in your own communities and organizations. Be sure to subscribe, rate and review Infrastructure Matters on your favorite platform and follow us on LinkedIn for more updates and exclusive content. I'm David Jenkins signing off, reminding you that in the realm of infrastructure, every detail matters.